Welcome to this video on using the text split function in Microsoft Excel to split a group of text into multiple cells. So I've got a couple of really good examples here. It's a newish function that I haven't used much before. And there's two different ways that you can do this to either split the text into cells horizontally or vertically. So I'm going to show you those examples, and I'm going to also show you an example where you've got different characters in the middle of different parts. So I've got two examples here. I've got an Alice Johnson and I've got a David Davis. They've got a first name, a second name, an order number, and then another number at the end. Now, Alice Johnson is split by commas, but David Davis has commas, but also a dash where the data's split. And there's something slightly different you can do there in order to make that happen. So I'm going to show you these examples today in this video. Let's start with the more simple one where we have the same split or delimiter in the top one. And just remember back to any other videos on this channel, if you're using functions or even formulas in Excel, you're always going to click into the cell where you want this to appear and then type in equals. So you're always going to start with equals. And then what I'm going to do is type in the function name, which is TEXTSPLIT. So let's just start typing that in. And when I type in text, you'll see a drop-down list of all of the options. TEXTSPLIT is the one I'm looking for. Now this one looks quite busy. There's lots and lots going on there. Now you can ignore most of this unless you've got a really complex example. And I'm going to try and keep it as simple as I possibly can to make it easy for everyone, just to get started, and then you can really dive into it and go for more complex options. So first off, it's text, and Excel will always give you an idea of what it's looking for. Text is the first one, so I need to tell Excel what I want to split, and I want to split Alice Johnson there. And remember, when you're breaking up any part of a function, you're going to use a comma. And when I comma, it's moved over. Now, remember I said you could split this horizontally or you could split it vertically. So when you do it horizontally, you split it up into columns. So you can see I've got a B, C, D, and E is a different column, and I've broken up my data. Row delimiter is if I want to split it up vertically, and that's what I'm going to do for the second example. You can see that slightly further down in the spreadsheet. So you only need to do either or, the column delimiter or the row delimiter. Because I'm doing the column one, what I'm going to do is tell the system what's breaking up my data, so it knows exactly where to separate it. And I usually do this in speech marks or quotation marks. So I'm going to put a speech mark in, put that comma in because it's the comma that's breaking up my data. And that's going to help Excel know exactly what to do. And then remember, if you put speech marks in, you have to close the speech marks, just like the brackets. So I'm closing that. Now I don't need to do row delimiter because I only need to do either or, so I can ignore that. But let's just have a quick talk about the rest of them. I'm not going to use them. This is me done, but I do just want to mention the rest of them. So ignore empty if you've used text join. Ignore empty is where you would be able to either ignore or include blanks so that your data appears as the way you would want it to. It's really not relevant for my example, so I don't have to do it. And you can see in the pop-up that appears, when it's in those types of brackets, it's not mandatory, it's optional. Match mode is if I'm looking for it to give me an exact match, a case sensitive match, all that sort of stuff. So again, it's not relevant for my example, but you can use that detail. And then padding as well. If there is a missing one, so when you go into the ignore one, if there is a missing one and you say include ignore, what do you put there rather than a blank space? So you can go and dive in and find out lots more about these, but in general, you're not really going to need to use those for very basic examples like I've got. So just to go back over that, I've got an equals text split. I've told the system where the field is, where the cell is that I want to split. I've told the system that I want to split it into columns, and by doing that I've done speech marks, comma, because that's what's splitting up my data, and close those speech marks. I'm now just going to close my brackets. I always do that even though I don't have to, just because it just helps me with the process and helps me with creating those functions, especially when they're more complex. It's really useful if you can do it manually. And then I'm just going to press enter there. And you can see now Alice Johnson, the order number and the order amount are split really, really nicely across those columns. Before we move on to the more complex one, let's just do the rows. So let's split it vertically. And I'm going to come down to this second section. And again, I'm going to click into that first box. And I'm going to do equals and text split. So this is going to be very similar. Double click on text split. Click on the Alice Johnson. Remember to comma. Now I'm not doing a column delimiter. So I'm just going to comma again. And you can see how it's moved now over to row delimiter. So this is the one where I'm going to put the speech marks, comma, and speech marks in. So speech marks, comma, speech marks to close. And then I am going to brackets to close. So you can just see there's a slight difference there because I've skipped the column delimiter and gone for the row delimiter instead. And let's press enter. And you can see now that's popped down below, which is really useful. So depending on how you want to split your data, whether you're doing it in the rows, the columns horizontally, or the rows vertically, it's very simple to do. You just need to pay attention to which part you are in the function. And I'll just click on that one so you can see it again, and then I'll click on that first one so you can also see that. So there's just a slight difference depending on which way you want it to be presented. So I thought I'd add in a slightly more complex one just to give you another example here, because sometimes you get data where it's got different ways of breaking it up, like David Davis. You can see there's some commas there, but there's also a dash. Now, if I try to do this in the same way that I did Alice Johnson, it's going to give me an error because there's one area there that doesn't have a comma. It's not going to format it properly for me. It's going to have David Davis, an order, and then 100. It's not going to split it up the way I would expect it to, but there's something that you can do to help this. So I'm going to start again by doing the equals and the text split. And once I've done that, again, I'm going to tell the system what text I want it to split and put a comma in there. Now I do want the column delimiter because I want to split this up the same way I have done. But what I need to do here is I need to put something called an array constant in there, which basically tells the system there are multiple delimiters I need it to pay attention to. So what I am going to do is put this funky sign in, and let me pop it in there so you can see what it looks like. And this is going to allow me to put multiple delimiters in there. So I'm always going to use my speech marks. So I'm going to do speech marks, comma, speech marks, because that's my first delimiter. There's still commas in there. And then what I need to do is comma to split it up. So I'm splitting it up even within this array. And I'm going to do speech marks dash speech marks. And I'm going to close it up with that same funky sort of bracket to close my array up. So what I've done is told the system this is the information I want it. I'm looking at A3, and then I'm doing the column, and you can see I'm still in the column delimiter. I've not moved to the row or anything because I've put the array in there. It's still kept me within that part of the function, which is really useful. And I'll zoom in so you can really see what those icons are. And I've got a comma and I have a dash. Remember to split up all of them. If you had multiple ones, if you had a dot between ones, you would just continue to put those in that same formatting, in that array, and then you would be absolutely fine. So I don't need to worry about anything else because I'm not worried about empties or matches or pads or anything. I'm just going to close my brackets because remember I opened them right at the beginning before A3 and then press enter. And it's now popped it over really, really nicely. So let me just go back onto David and I'll zoom in to the function bar there, and you can see that one is a little bit different just because it's got that array in it, but they're really useful if you've got multiple examples of the same sort of delimiter that you want it to pay attention to. So just slightly more complex there to play around with. TEXTSPLIT is a really useful function. It's one that I'm going to start to use. It's not one that I've used a lot in the past. So definitely go and have a look and see whether it might work for you if you're playing with your data and interrogating it in Microsoft Excel. So don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and please do let me know what videos you'd like me to record next.